Good morning, class.
Good
morning,
morning,
madam.
Good morning.
Good morning, madam.
Morning, madam.
Madam.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, sister.
I hope you are all doing well.
Yes, please.
Good morning.
Okay. So let's start our class. And by now, I'm sure we all have our index numbers. So, as I said last week, kindly rename your identity with your name and your index number.
Not
I can
yet.
see that a lot of you have done it. Okay.
Please sit
All
down.
right. So this is Human Physiology 1. The course code is NURS 307. It's a 2-credit.
Madam, please, before you start, I want to take this opportunity to remind all of us one thing. Please
wait.
kindly
Kingsley, wait.
mute yourself.
Kingsley, hold on. Please, if you have any suggestion, any contribution, you put up your hand. I call you, you contribute. You can't just mute yourself and speak. You can't do that. So if you want to make any contribution, just put up your hand. I'll call you. Yes, Kingsley.
Please, members, kindly mute yourself. Kindly mute yourself. We don't want to hear those noise again. Those distractions. Please, mute yourself. Thank you very much.
All right. So concerning the disturbance in class, no, if you are mute, I'll mute you. If I'm unable to mute you, I'll remove you from the class, and that's it. You can't join the class for the day. That's all. So Kingsley, don't worry. Okay. So if I see that you are disturbing the class, I'll just mute you. If it's not possible, I'll just take you out of the class, and you can't join again. Since I've taken you out, you can't join again. All right. So this is Human Physiology 1. Course code is NURS 307, 2-credit hour course. My name is Patience, and I'll be taking you for this semester and hopefully Physiology 2 for the next semester. I met most of you last week, and it occurred to me that some of you have still not received admission, so we have to pause and then continue today. So I hope that today most of us around have received our admission letters and therefore we qualify to be here. All right. Yes, Bertrand.
Madam, please, I have a concern. I know a number of us still have not gotten our admission yet, so because of that, we don't have our index numbers. So I would have pleaded that maybe you give us at least a week.
That cannot be done because I spoke to the CODeL director and he assured me that by Friday this week, all admissions will be given out. So if you are not given admission, then you don't qualify to be in class. So please, if you don't have your index number, you don't qualify to be here. And he told me by Friday this week, they will be done. So that is it. So if you don't have it, you don't qualify to be here, please. And we can't wait. We have started lectures. All right, so last week, we mentioned some rules that would help us have an organized class. And as students, I expect all of you to be in class always. If should in case the class would be canceled, I'm sure I will inform the class rep earlier, okay, about 30 minutes before the time, so that he will let you guys know. And You have to also be on time. So it's past 11:45, almost 15 minutes, and then we have about 500 students in class. And I plead with you all to come on time so that you don't miss any of the class activities. And you are expected to read wide, read constantly, make sure you get what is taught in class, broaden your knowledge on all the topics that is taught here. It's not everything that can be said here. So when you go back, you have to read wide. And in class too, you have to listen attentively and analyze what is being said. If you have any question, you put up your hand, you'll be called so that you can share your view on any of the topics. And this is going to be an interactive class where you guys will also talk and share your ideas on a particular topic. And as we all know, we are expected to mute your microphones. If you don't do that, I'll mute you. If it's not possible, I'll just take you off the class and you can't join the class again. If you are in an interactive, a distractive area and you have to move away from there, please. Don't let me take you out and then later you come and tell me that it wasn't your fault and that your area that you were, there was too much noise. I won't take that excuse. As a student, you are expected to be seated at where class will be convenient for you. All right. So you are also expected to partake in all class assessments. So with class assessments, we are saying we have quizzes, attendance, and other contributions assessments that will be done. With quizzes, there will be times where you'll be grouped into groups or tables for discussion, then you come and present on a particular topic. Then for attendance, I'll decide the day I take attendance, and you wouldn't also be aware. We have some marks allocated for each of them, and those who also answer questions in class, contribute, ask questions in class, they will also be given scores. This semester, I won't be taking any midterm examination. So your continuous assessment will be based on your quizzes, your attendance, and then your class assessment. That will sum up to 30%. Then you have your end of semester exams, which is 70%. So these are some textbooks that you can look out for. You can look out for to broaden your knowledge on physiology. So we have the course content. Basically, we are going to talk about physiology of the human system. And the system is into 11 different systems. So you talk about each of them if there's time for the 2 semesters. So for the first semester of which you have started, we talk of the introduction to general physiology. And we talk about the basis of the human physiology, talking of level of organization, body fluid compartments, homeostasis, transport mechanisms. Then we start with the systems, with the nervous system, talk of how the nervous system functions from the cellular level to the systemic level. And we talk of the skeletal system, the muscle system, cardiovascular system. Then we end there for the semester. Then physiology 2, we continue with the respiratory, digestive system, urinary system, reproductive, endocrine. And if there's time, we add the rest of the systems to it. So I expect you, after each class, to be able to describe, explain, define, compare, and state. Sorry. State and explain in details how the functions of a particular system, starting from its basic level, happens. So, for example, when you talk of the introductory physiology, you want to look at the level of organization, to describe the level of organization of the human body. Then, when you talk of the external environment, you should be able to also define or what at all it is. Then we look at homeostasis. And when you talk of homeostasis, what is it? That's the basis of physiology. So what is the mechanisms of homeostasis? What at all enables the body to maintain its normal internal environment? So as you move on, all of this is expected of you to be able to bring out or share your views and ideas on the particular topic that has been treated. So I remember last week we shared our views on what physiology is, and we also differentiated between physiology and then anatomy. So to do a recap, we mentioned physiology as the study of how the human parts or the human structures function under normal healthy conditions. So all that you'll be talking about here is how the body functions normally. And we emphasize that we can't just state that physiology is the study of how the body functions, because the body also functions in a way when it's not normal. It's not normal. So, and that is another course. But physiology, we look at when you are healthy, when you are normal, your normal state, how things are working within you, how structures are working within you, how body parts are working within you. And anatomy also is the study of the human structures or human parts. And we mentioned that you'll be talking about physiology now. So generally, we are saying physiology is the study of how living organisms function. And it answers the question why and how. Why and how? And why is this happening? Why is that happening? How does it occur? What process does it go through before this happens? Which mechanism does this occur? So we are going to look at the processes involved for each of the activities and mechanisms of the body. And as I said, we are going to look at it from the healthy point of view, the normal point of view. And this is going to help us broaden our knowledge as nurses, so that we get to know when there's a malfunction or dysfunction in any part of the body. Because without knowing how normal something is, you wouldn't know when there's any abnormality. So that's the essence of physiology studies. So aside physiology, general physiology, or sorry, aside human physiology, you can talk of other branches of physiology, of which is not of our interest. Because we are nurses, we are focusing on the human. So others can be plants, viral, and so on. All right. So aside physiology, human physiology helping us in the clinical setting, we're also saying that those who be interested in research, furthering their studies into their master's, PhD, can also look at physiology, human physiology, in any aspect, in any system, and then explore to improve the quality of life and to make discoveries, and also to help develop therapies and interventions that would improve healthcare. So aside you being at the clinical setting, you can also decide to further do your master's in physiology or your PhD, where you contribute to science, you contribute to research, making new discoveries so that it can help improve lives. So we have different specialties in human physiology, a lot of them. And you can have them based on categories. You can have them based on the level of organization. So when you talk of that, then you are looking at the cell physiology, or the cell, the tissue physiology, organs, systemic physiology. All these are branches that you can look out for during your further studies. And under each of them, you can also look at the specific type of cell, zooming into a specific type to just study only that aspect and look at what and look at an outcome. And you can also look at the systems as well. So you can talk of the cardiovascular system, and the cardiovascular system, you can also look at particular organ there. You talk of the heart, you look at research done in the heart and how it can contribute to healthcare and science. And so you can just zoom in into that, any of them. So if we have a lot of specialties in human physiology. However, for now, we need the broad general knowledge in human physiology, how the human body parts function normally. You can also talk of exercise physiology, how exercise also affects the normal function of the human system. So when you talk of level of organization of the human body, we are talking of where the build-up of the whole being began from. So we talk of it starting from the cell. However, the biochemistry or chemistry lecturer would start from the chemical level, where he or she will tell you we have, first of all, atoms coming together to form a molecule. And therefore, we have two or more molecules also coming together to form a cell. But physiologically, we are saying the cell is the basic unit of life, and therefore that's the first level of organization. And within the cell, we are saying we have some molecules, some structures, and all that. So those molecules and structures come under the chemical level. So physiology, we are saying the cell is the basic unit of life. The cell is the basic unit of life, of which all life processes begin. Okay. So when you have two or more similar cells coming together to perform a particular function, we are saying that will form a tissue. Then you have two or more tissues coming together to form an organ. Two or more organs performing a similar function would come together to form a system. Then you have different systems working together to form a whole organism. So when you talk of a cell, you talk of two main types. You talk of a generalized cell and then a specialized cell. A generalized cell and a specialized cell. A generalized cell is what you can see on the slide. Basically, the cells that make up our being. And it has a cell membrane, a thin layer that surrounds the cell to allow or regulate whatever that comes in and out of the cell. Okay. Then we have a fluid that is found inside the cell. The fluid is called the cytosol. The cytosol. The cytosol is a fluid. Fluid meaning is water plus some dissolved substances. Then we have these solid structures called organelles. These organelles are performing their unique functions. Example, the nucleus, we have the lysosome, we have the centrosome, and so on. So all of these have their unique functions, of which I'm aware you have done that at the diploma level. And we also know that the cytosol plus the organelles together is going to give you the cytoplasm. So mainly we have the cytoplasm and then the cell membrane of the cell. Then you talk of the specialized cells. So for the specialized cells, we are saying we have different types. I've just sampled few, and we are going to talk about why they are special. So we have about 40 to 100 trillion individual cells, 200 distinct cell types that are unique because of the way they look like and basically how they function or their unique function. And just like how I described the generalized cell, in a way, these cells, they either have some added structures or parts that are unique to them, or they lack what the generalized cell has. For example, when you pick the first one, which is the intestinal epithelial cell, this cell also has the organelles and the cell membrane and so on. But in addition, it has a unique microvilli. These are structures that allows easy absorption of nutrients in the intestines. And that's why we are saying it's special, because it's found in the intestinal epithelial cell, lines the intestines, and this unique structure of it enable easy absorption of nutrients after digestion into the blood. Then we also have hold on, pause, let me just adjust this. So we also have this cell, which is the neuron. The neuron is a specialized cell because of the structure and its unique function. So as you can see, we also have the cytoplasm, just like the generalized cell, but we have other extensions from the cell body or the soma. You get to know more when you get to the nervous system. That's the part, this part, the soma or the cell body. So we have extension from this cell body called dendrites. And these dendrites are unique to the neuron or the nerve cell, the neuron or the nerve cell. So its function is to transmit impulses or signals to and fro in the body. Aside the dendrites, it also has the axon, the elongated part of the neuron that helps transmit impulses. Aside that, it also has an axon terminal. This axon terminal also helps cross a signal from one neuron to another. So because of how it's structured or how it is, and its unique function, which is transmitting signals to and fro in the body, makes it a specialized cell. Then we also have the muscle cell. The muscle cell is also specialized. First of all, looking at their structure. Structure is elongated. It doesn't look like the generalized cell. Aside that, too, some of them are multinucleated, where they have more than one nuclei. Then they are also saying some are striated, where they have some proteins that makes them look like there are striations in them, which is not seen in the generalized cell. And these muscle cells are also excitable. Excitable meaning they have the ability to receive a signal from the nerve. They have the ability to receive a signal from the nerve for them to contract. So the main function of the muscle cell is to contract for an activity to occur. We have three types: the skeletal muscle, the smooth muscle, the cardiac muscle. So when you pick the skeletal muscle cell, we are saying that is what contracts to enable movement to occur. These skeletal muscle cells would come together to form the skeletal muscle tissue that is attached to our bones or our skeleton. And it's upon contraction of this skeletal muscle as it receives a signal from the nervous system that enables movement to occur. Smooth muscles are also found within the internal organs, and that also contracts upon receiving signal from the nervous system for contraction to occur for a particular activity to occur. Such activities can be breathing, that is involving your lungs, your diaphragm, intercostal muscles. It can also be digestion, where it involves your GIT, organs of your GIT. So all these, we have smooth muscles in place that contract to enable digestion to occur. Then we also have cardiac muscle cell. Cardiac muscle cell, a lot of them come together to form the cardiac muscle tissue. And this muscle tissue is going to contract. Upon receiving a signal from the nervous system for either increase or decrease in heart rate, or for contraction to occur for increase or decrease in heart rate. So all these are specialized because of the way they look like and their specific function. And we also look at the one example of a white blood cell. We have 5 types. So this is one type. This is a granular white blood cell. And granular because it's containing some granules. And this doesn't look like a generalized cell, as I said. You can see that it has 3 lobes. These lobes are not found in a generalized cell. It's unique to this white blood cell. And it also has some bubble-like structures that contains chemicals that will be released upon a particular pathogen or foreign material entering the human system, fighting against that pathogen. So this white blood cell helps fight against infections and diseases in the system. And this function is unique to the white blood cell. Then we also have the red blood cell, where, first of all, the color alone gives it out because of a lot of a protein called hemoglobin. This hemoglobin functions to bind to oxygen, binds to oxygen to transport oxygen to every part of the body. Every cell, every tissue in the body needs oxygen to survive. And therefore, we have blood running through every part of the body, and it's the function of this red blood cell to supply oxygen to parts of the body. So this hemoglobin binds to oxygen, transports oxygen to all parts of the body. So aside the red color, the hemoglobin, we also have the shape of the red blood cell. You can see that the center is dented. The center is dented to allow for or to increase the surface area for a lot of oxygen to bind to hemoglobin. And we also don't have organelles in the red blood cells like how we have in a generalized cell. They are also flexible, able to squeeze themselves through tiny capillaries. That is also unique to the red blood cell. Then we talk of the last specialized cell. The rest you can go and read more. You can talk of the sperm cell. So the sperm cell also doesn't look like the generalized cell. And this cell has the head, the middle piece, and then the tail. The head is somehow where we have the organelles, the nucleus, the acrosome, and so on. So all the function of this sperm cell is to also continue reproduction or to fuse with the female gamete for reproduction to occur. So that function is also unique to the sperm cell, and the way it is also unique in terms of structure. Any questions at this point? The center of the red blood cell is dented to allow a lot of oxygen bind to hemoglobin. So it increases the surface area of the cell. You know, we need more oxygen to bind to a particular red blood cell. And therefore, the center being dented enables, spreads the surface area or increases the surface area for that to happen. Charlotte. Okay. Charlotte, your hand is still up. Should I come again or you are okay? All right. So we move on. Then we have two or more similar cells coming together to form a tissue. So tissues are a group of cells that work together to perform a similar function. We have four main types of tissue, basically. We have the epithelium, we have the connective tissue, the muscle tissue, and then the nerve tissue. We have the epithelium or epithelial tissue, we have the connective tissue, the muscle tissue, and then the nerve tissue. The nerve tissue will just give you a clue that we have a lot of nerve cells or neurons coming together to form this nerve tissue. The muscle tissue will also give you a clue that we have the skeletal muscle cells, a lot of it coming together to form the skeletal muscle tissue. Cardiac muscle cells coming together to form cardiac muscle tissues. We have the smooth muscle cells coming together to form smooth muscle tissue. So that will give you the muscle tissue. Now let's look at the epithelial tissue and then the connective tissue. Now the epithelial tissue mostly lines the external part of the body or covers surfaces. Okay, so it also lines some of the internal parts of the body. And when you talk of the internal part, not really the organs, because for the organs, we have the smooth muscle that makes up them. But some of them too, we have the epithelial lining some of the organs. You get to know more as you move to each of the systems. We have types of epithelial tissue. can talk of the squamous, the cuboidal, the columnar. Can also talk in a different category based on the number of layers. So we have simple or stratified. First of all, if you want to categorize the epithelial tissue based on the number of layers these cells come together to form, we are saying we have simple stratified. From the diagram, you can see that this is a simple epithelia because it's just one layer. So it's just one layer. So you have cells packed together. So you can see 1, 2, 3. And you also have 1, 2, 3 just behind that way coming together. But it's in a layer, just one layer. And that makes it simple. Then you have the stratified, where we have 1, we have another 2, 3, 4. So you have a lot of layers stacked together. Okay, so that is stratified. And now more than one layer of epithelial cells. Then you also have categorizing epithelial tissue based on the shape of the cells, So for the shape of the cells, you can talk of the cells that look flat, just like how you see, ones that looks like a square, same width, same breadth. Then you also have the ones that are elongated or longer, as you can see here. So the ones that are flattened are called squamous. Then the ones that looks like square is called the cuboidal. Take note, cuboidal. Then the ones that looks elongated are called columnar. So if you are to combine the shape and then the layers, then you could have several kinds of epithelial cells. You can talk of the simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar. Okay. Then we also have another unique type of epithelial tissue called pseudostratified. Pseudostratified is from the name pseudo. Pseudo means false. Stratified meaning number of layers. So the stratification. This is giving us a false number of layers because of how it is presented. So when you look at this, you can see that you might think that the number of layers is 1, probably 2, here 3, because of, the dark structures you see in there is the nucleus. So if you look at it, you might think we have 1, 2, 3 layers, which is not so. It's just one layer. It's a simple columnar epithelia. It's just that the way the cells are stuck together, some of the nucleus, since is flowing in a cytosol, can squeeze itself up or down. So you might think, since the nucleus is up and some is down, you might think it's 2 or 3 layers, not knowing it's just one layer. So you can see that this cell, the nucleus is this. This cell, the nucleus is that. This cell, the nucleus is this. This cell, the nucleus is that. Just that they are stuck together, and therefore you might assume it in a different way. So pseudo is false. So it's giving us a false stratification. Then we also have transitional epithelial tissue. Transitional epithelial tissue, from the name, transitions. So when, depending on the function at a time, we are saying it also assumes whether it's the number of layers and the shape of the cells, they mimic a different shape. So a common example is what we know we have in the urinary bladder. So when you have a lot of urine in the bladder stretches or distends. When it stretches, we are saying it distorts the normal shape of the epithelial cells that lines the urinary bladder. And when you pee and the shape of the bladder comes back to its normal way, we are saying the epithelial cells will now come back to its normal shape. However, when we have a lot of urine in there, because it's stretching, it's going to give you a different kind of shape of the cells that is found in there. So it transitions. So the cells in there transitions. The shape of the cells transition based on the function at a particular time. Now let's take this first assignment. Okay, so before I take the assignment, let me explain the shapes again. Someone is a little confused. So the shapes, we are saying, when you hear squamous, you might think the shape is a square. No, that is the flattened cell, loose flat, just like how you see here. Then the cuboidal radar looks like a square, as you can see. Then the columnar looks longer, as you see. Just take that, understand it that way. Make sure the squamous is flat. Cuboidal looks like the square. Then the columnar is elongated. Okay. So when the red blood cells, they don't lose the shape. Sickle cell, I'm answering a question from the group, the chat. Someone is saying, when the red blood cell loses its shape, does that tend to be a sickle cell? No. Sickle cell is genetic. It's something that your bone marrow naturally produce, okay? So instead of the normal shape that I showed you, your bone marrow produces a sickle-shaped red blood cell, not like how you see it. So if your red blood cells are naturally produced normally, that is it. It doesn't change. Okay, it doesn't change anyway. Sickle cell is hereditary, genetic, and therefore is produced from the bone marrow just like that in the sickle shape. Okay, Portia. Portia, your hand is up. Right. So your assignment. So look for examples of tissues, examples of each of these tissues and where they are located in the body. Then you state their function. Look for examples of where these epithelial tissues are found in the body and their functions. Rachel.
Yeah, madam. Sorry, sister. Please, if I'm correct, I wanted to clarify your question. So you said we should look for examples of tissues that fall under the types of the epithelial tissues, and then where they are found in their body, and then their function as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have other questions coming out in the chat group. And I believe some of them, if I answer them, then probably I would answer some of the assignments. So just go and do your research and come and tell me if that tissue is transitional or just go and do your research and come back next week. All right. Yes, Rita.
Sister, please, I wanted to get something here. Under the epithelial tissue, when you started, you said that under the epithelial stratified. And for the simple and the stratified
Rita, your line is breaking. We can't hear you clearly.
tissue, that's where we can find the full cubicle. And when we come to the stratified epithelial tissue, that's where I have the problem. Transition and the stratified squamous epithelium. So that place, I wasn't getting it right. That's why I wanted to ask.
Rita, I couldn't hear you. I don't know if the network is coming from my end or it's from your place. I didn't hear you. Your line was breaking.
Sister, okay. I was saying that you were teaching us on epithelial tissue. And you made mention of two types of epithelial tissue, being the simple and the stratified epithelial tissue. And under the simple epithelial tissue, that's where we have the simple columnar and the simple cubicle C-rated epithelial tissue. And under the stratified epithelial tissue, I heard of transitional epithelial tissue, but the other one I couldn't hear that.
Okay. So please pay attention. I mentioned that with epithelial tissue, we have two categories of classification. That is well understood. We have two categories of classifications. First of all, we classify them based on the number of layers. So when you look at the number of layers, then you look at either simple or stratified. Then we also look at another category where we look at the shapes. So when you look at the shapes, we have squamous, cuboidal, and columnar. So you know you are going to have about 6 different types of epithelial tissue, where we have simple squamous, stratified squamous, simple cuboidal, stratified cuboidal, simple columnar, stratified columnar. However, we also have different types that is not based on the two categories you've mentioned. We have the pseudostratified and then the transitional. Rita, do you get how I broke it down?
Yes, sister.
Yes. So it's not into two types. No.
Okay.
Two categories. First category is under how the number of layers, and then the second category is the shape they carry.
Okay, sister. Thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. Yes, Isaac, last person, then we continue.
Sister, please, I wanted to know when are you supposed to submit the assignment?
Please, I'll tell you when I'm done.
Okay.
All right. So connective to, I'm not done with the assignment. As I move on, I'll be adding up. So don't worry. Don't be asking questions about the assignment. Connective tissue. Connective tissue is also a type of tissue that supports, protects, and gives structure to the other tissues and organs in the body. And these tissues basically are made of cells. Some of the cells are not similar in structure and probably in function. A common example I'll use is the blood. So you can see that the blood is made of cells. You can talk of red blood cells I mentioned. You can also talk of white blood cells. You can also find the platelets, which are cell fragments that are found in the blood. So these cells come together and they don't look like the epithelial cell, the epithelial tissue where they are stuck together. The cells are stuck together. No, the connective tissue is such that the cells in there are surrounded by extracellular matrix. These extracellular matrices are made of some ground substances, some are fluid. So when you talk of the blood as an example, we have an extracellular matrix, which is the plasma or the fluid part that surrounds the cells. So connective tissues, you don't have the cells stacking together, just like the epithelial tissue. The cells are surrounded by fluid extracellular matrices based on the type of connective tissue. So for the blood, we have plasma, the fluid part of the blood that surrounds the cells. And the cells are also not really performing a similar function because the red blood cells are transporting oxygen, white blood cells are fighting against infections and diseases, platelets are also helping with blood clotting, and so on. So these cells would come together all right to form a tissue, but they are not stuck together like the epithelial tissue. They are surrounded by the extracellular matrix. Same for cartilage and bones. So you also have the osteocytes, the osteoblasts. All these are bone cells that make up bone. And we all have extracellular matrices that surround these cells such that the cells are not attached to each other. Same for cartilage. So these three are the common examples of connective tissues that support, protects, and gives structures to tissues and organs. Muscle, I've already spoken about it. Cardiac muscle tissue made of cardiac muscle cells. Skeletal muscle tissue is made of skeletal muscle cells. And then the smooth muscle tissue made of smooth muscle cells. Now, we are saying the cardiac muscle tissue is involved in voluntary activities. Same for smooth muscle tissue, involuntary activity. And this is as a result of the activities that are not under conscious control, or you are not able to control this kind of activities consciously. They receive a signal from the nervous system and they act without you knowing. For example, your heartbeat. So as your heart is beating, you can't control or you can't regulate it. Tell it to stop or to increase or decrease. So it's dependent on the nervous system. It's linked up with the nervous system for them to act. And with that, you as an individual, you are not consciously aware of that. That's involuntary activities. And you can see that their cells are elongated, as we mentioned when we're talking of the specialized cells. The cardiac one, they are uninucleated. They carry one nucleus. They have striations, the protein fibers that gives it striations that enables it to contract. Then we also have the smooth muscle that doesn't have the protein that enables it, that gives the striations. However, it has its own way of contracting to enable activities to occur. Then we talk of the skeletal muscle tissue made of skeletal muscle cell that is found or attached to our bones that contract to enable movement to occur. Then we talk of the last type of tissue. The last type of tissue is the nervous tissue. The nervous tissue is made of the neuron or the nerve cell. The nervous tissue is made of the neuron and then the nerve cell. Now, the neuron, as I mentioned earlier, as a specialized tissue, helps transmit signals to and fro in the body. Signals are just like information being passed on, in and out, or from your brain through your spinal cord to your legs, to your intestines, to your heart, and so on. So a lot of these nerve cells or neurons would come together to form the nerve. Just pay attention to how the way I choose my terms. I said the nerve cell or the neuron. So if you write only nerve is taken as the nerve tissue. If you want to refer the nerve as a cell, you have to add the cell to it. So the nerve cell or the neuron, a lot of them will come together to form the nerve or the nerve tissue. When you are writing, take note, because any small mistake, you are going to say something else. Okay. So the structure of the nerve cell, as you see, we have the dendrites, the cell body, the axon terminal. We have the dendrites, we have the cell body or soma, we have the axon, and then we have the axon terminal. I mentioned earlier that the dendrites are responsible for receiving a signal. So if you are passing a signal or impulse throughout the body, this dendrite will receive the signal from one neuron, and then it will pass the signal across the cell body. Then it will move along the axon. That's where the main transmission of the signal occurs. Then finally, it gets to the axon terminal where it crosses to another neuron. Another dendrite of the second neuron will receive it and also pass it across. A lot of this neuron or nerve cell will come together to form the nerve tissue. So we have bundle of nerves. We have bundle of nerves that is running through the body, transmitting signals and impulses. So we will have a lot of discussion on this when we get to the nervous system, where we find out that bundle of nerves would form the peripheral nervous system that enables signals to be transmitted from parts of the body to the central nervous system. You also talk about the myelin sheath, which helps speed up the rate of transmission of impulse in the central nervous system and then the peripheral nervous system. So we'll talk more about the function of the nerve or the nerve tissue in the nervous system. Melchizedek, Aban.
Madam, please, I want to ask if all muscles are straightened.
If all what?
If all muscle tissues are straightened.
Please, can you answer that question? Because from what I just explained, are all muscles straightened? From the slide, what I explained during specialized cell and this tissue cell, muscle tissue slide. Those with your hands up, are you trying to answer the question? Yes, Agnes.
Madam, please, you said it's only the cardiac muscle that is striated.
No, I didn't say only cardiac. You can see from the slide. Look at the skeletal muscle. We also have dash striations. Like the lines you see inside. That's the striations. They are proteins, specific proteins. That helps with contraction. You can see that you don't see it in the smooth muscle. So the smooth muscle is not striated.
Thank you.
Yes, madam. Please, I understand now.
Yeah. So when you are being asked to give differentiation among the three, that is one of it. The smooth muscle is not striated. Edu Ajewa Mora. All right.
Okay, madam, please, can everyone hear me? Ma'am, please, I want to ask about adipose tissues and then areolar tissues, because I think at the diploma level, we learned something about connective tissues proper, where we have loose connective tissues and then dense connective tissues, under which the adipose and then the areola falls under. I want to know if it's actually part of the connective tissues or it's no more part of it. Thank
It's
you.
not. You are asking if it's no more parts.
Yes, please, because I didn't hear you mention that.
Okay, so if I didn't mention, that doesn't mean it's no more parts, because
Oh,
if
okay.
the research is done and it's established, we don't go back and say that is not it. Okay, so those are the types of or other sub-classifications of connective tissues. I only gave examples of connective tissues. You understand? Huh?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. So they are parts, they are just sub-classifications of connective tissues. You can have different kinds. And epithelial tissue too, we can have different other classifications. Okay, so all that we are doing here is looking at the basic general types of epithelial tissue, connective tissue. We are looking at the common examples we have and what they do. Okay. Okay. Then we look at the organs. So organs. So organs are structures composed of two or more different types of tissues. Okay. And they are there to also perform a specific function. And we are saying we can have all but the simplest of organs having all four basic tissues represented. So most of the organs in the body are made of the four basic types of tissues we have just mentioned. The epithelial tissue that lines the inner part. We have the connective tissue, we have the nerve tissue, and then finally, you also have the muscle tissue. So most of the organs in our system have these four basic tissue types. It's just few that would have either two or three. Now I'll take your second question for the assignment. So list all underlined. List all organs of the system, all organs of the human body and their tissue makeup. List all organs of the human system, the human body, and their tissue makeup. So you tend to have a lot of organs that are going to perform a particular function, forming a system. So you can have the respiratory system made up of the lungs, We have the conducting pathways, the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles. We can also talk of the upper airways, such as the nose or the nostrils, the nasal cavity, and so on. The pharynx, the larynx, all these organs come together to form the respiratory system. The cardiac or the cardiovascular system would also give you the heart. We have the blood vessels, and then we have the blood vessels coming together with the blood as a connective tissue to form the cardiovascular system. The GIT you can also have from the mouth through the esophagus, the stomach, intestines, the anus, the rectum. All these organs come together to form the GIT as a system. So you have 11 systems, starting with the nervous system. On top of the nervous system, transmission of signals, muscular together with skeletal, helping with contraction and movement in other activities in the body. You have the integumentary system, the skin, and so on. That is helping regulate the internal environment. Then we also have reproductive, helping with reproduction, urinary system, helping excrete waste from the body, respiratory, helping excrete carbon dioxide and also bring in oxygen that is vital to the body. Digestion, helping breaking down food to the absorbable units. Lymphatic, also helping excrete fluids. Cardiovascular, also helping circulate nutrients, oxygen, water, important substances to and fro in the body. Endocrine also secrete hormones that regulate activities in the body. And body. From the organism, as we all know, consists of all that you have mentioned in an entity. So we have 6 important life processes that every individual undergoes for him or her to survive. Metabolism, that is breaking down formation of substances in the body. We have responsiveness, the ability of your nervous system to respond to, or your ability of your muscles to respond together, working together with the nervous system to respond to whatever that is happening around you and also internally. Movement with the help of the skeletal system, the muscular system, and you also have growth, your ability to also the ability to able to accept or absorb nutrients, use them to undergo metabolism within the cells for the cells to also generate molecules and proteins, carbohydrates, and others that would enable you to survive. Then you also have differentiation of cells that enables new cells to be formed. For example, your red blood cells, they last for 120 days, that's their lifespan. Therefore, differentiation of cells in the bone marrow would help form new cells that will be released into the blood to continue this life process. Production to also continue life. All right, so in health, we are saying all parts of the body must be functioning together in a process called homeostasis. In health, physiologically, we are saying all parts of the body must be functioning together in a process called homeostasis. So as an individual, we have some survival needs. Jonas, Yintu, please mute yourself. This is the third time I'm muting you. Mute yourself. Otherwise, you'll be taken out of the class. Okay. So we have, first of all, nutrients. You need nutrients to survive. You need to eat for the cells to get glucose, amino acids, and then we have fatty acids and so on for cell buildup, for the cells to use them up to also produce some carbohydrates and proteins for the body to survive. You also need oxygen, which is key for the release of energy, essential for the body. So day in and day out, we need energy in the form of ATP for movement and other activities to occur. And that is aided, or that is gotten from oxygen transmission throughout the body. Then water is also very essential, where we have a lot of activities, chemical reactions occurring in there. I don't know why he keeps muting. So that is the site for most chemical reactions. Even in the cell, the fluid part is mainly made of water. That helps with a lot of chemical reactions to occur. Then you also need to have a normal body temperature for a lot of cells to survive or work well. So that is also another survival need. They also need an appropriate atmospheric pressure that would help with exchange of gases or air to and fro in the lungs. All right, any questions up to this point? If you have a question, kindly put up your hand. Yes, Abubakari Abdallah.
Sister, like the second question you gave, that assignment this, and I didn't get it.
You list all organs of the body and then the tissue types that make them up.
Thank you.
Any other question? All right, let's continue. Now you look at body fluids. First of all, what is a fluid? I've already explained it severally as I'm teaching. So let me know if you are paying attention. What is a fluid? Class. Abdallah, your hand is still up. Daniel, Anefi.
Yeah, madam. Please, I would say a fluid is any liquid substance within the body, like the plasma that I made mention of.
Any liquid substance?
Yes, please.
Okay, but I want what I kept saying. I kept explaining fluid. as I was teaching. What did I say? Yes, Kingsley.
Madam, a fluid is any liquid substance together with other chemicals in a body fluid, in a body cavity, which serves to protect or lubricate the where it is found.
That is fine, but that's not what I said. Basically, when you say fluid, what comes to mind? I have been explaining this. Williams.
Hello, madam.
Yes.
Madam,
Hello. Fluid are the water that are found within the body.
That's not what I said.
Hello, madam. I want to talk about this.
Who is this?
This is Michael.
Michael, I've not called you.
Oh, sorry.
Let me call you first, okay, so that we have an organized class.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Michael, come in.
Okay, I think a fluid, when you were talking about it, you spoke about anything that flows without a shape and is without a shape.
Oh, I didn't mention that.
Okay.
All your submissions are right, but I didn't say it. That means you are not paying attention. Constance. Constance, we can't hear you. Yes.
It is said that a fluid consists of water and some dissolved particles of substance.
Yes, that is it. That's what I said. I said a fluid is water plus dissolved substances. Okay, so when you say liquid, example of liquid, water, or any other liquid that you can talk of. With the exception of water, any other liquid that you can imagine is water, is still water plus some substances within it. So when you say liquid, you can also talk about fluid, okay? So when you want to basically describe fluid, you want to mainly say part of it is water, part of it is dissolved substances. But majority of that fluid is water. That's why it can flow. Okay. So fluid is water plus dissolved substance. And we want to talk about the different types of fluid that we have in our system, our human system, our body. Please, if you were answering the question, kindly lower your hand so that I know those with their hands still up. So we want to talk about the fluid, different kinds of fluid that is found within the body and how it helps regulate homeostasis. Yes, Kingsley.
With the fluids, I can talk of synovial fluids.
I've not asked any question.
Oh, okay.
So kindly lower your hands, please. So we have body fluids mainly made of water plus dissolved chemicals inside or outside the cell. And we need to maintain the volume and composition of the body fluid. It's very important. We always need to maintain the volume and composition of fluid, for example, inside the cell. Inside the cell, what's the name of the fluid inside the cell? What's the name of the fluid inside the cell? The specific name of the fluid inside the cell. Benedicta, Yabua. Benedicta Yeboah. Sure.
Madam, please, cytosol.
Yes, cytosol. So the cytosol is the fluid part of the cell. And we are saying we need to maintain the volume and then the composition of this fluid. Now the cytosol is made of water mainly. You also have electrolytes such as sodium ions, potassium ions, magnesium chloride, and so on. You also have nutrients that enters the cell, dissolves into the fluid part. You also have some waste excreted from the cell found within the cytosol. So all these components we are saying needs to be maintained. And in maintaining them, we are saying we have a way of regulating them. It's the function of the cell membrane to regulate what comes in and out of the cell. So always the cell membrane will regulate, let's say, water movement in and out of the cell, regulate these electrolytes that I have mentioned. Make sure that the cell is in good shape. Now the fluid inside the cell, known as the cytosol, is an intracellular fluid. Intra is inside, cellular is cell, and fluid is what you just explained. So intracellular fluid is the fluid found within the cells. We have extracellular fluid. Extra is outside or external to the cell. Extracellular fluid is the fluid found outside the cell. Now, the extracellular fluid, we can have the fluid that surrounds right around the cells. Right around the cells. That is the interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. So it surrounds the cells. Then we have other extracellular fluid that doesn't surround the cells, but they are found in other parts of the body. Let's look at them. You can talk of the plasma. The plasma. So you can talk of plasma, which is the fluid part of the blood. So you can see that it doesn't surround the cells. Yeah, meaning I'm talking of the generalized cells. It doesn't surround the generalized cells right around it, but rather we are saying is farther away in blood vessels. So this blood plasma is also an extracellular fluid. Then we also have lymph that runs through the lymphatic vessels, also an example of an extracellular fluid. We have the cerebrospinal fluid that's also found in the brain and spinal cord. That's also an extracellular fluid. All these are external to the cell or outside the cell. Synovial, we found within joints, aqueous humor in the cavity of the eyes. So we are saying all these are extracellular fluid. And in addition to the interstitial fluid that surrounds the cell directly, are all classified under extracellular fluid. Okay. So when you talk of how substances are transported across or from one fluid compartment to the other, I'll explain the first one. Then I'll call out some other people to also explain. So this is the interstitial fluid, a branch of extracellular fluid. Now these are cells, and therefore within the cell we have the intracellular fluid. And we have a lot of cells stuck together. So you can see from here that we have epithelial tissue, just like how they are arranged. Okay, they are stuck together, so the epithelial tissue. And they also look flattened, so you can talk of the squamous epithelial tissue. So we are saying that for Substances to move from the organs, move into the blood, move into the fluid surrounding the cells before they get into the cells. We want to look at how that happens. So when you breathe in or take in air, we focus more on oxygen components. So when we take in air, we want to get oxygen diffusing or moving from the alveoli of the lungs into the blood. So oxygen will move from the lungs into the blood. Then this same oxygen will also be transported by the red blood cells. When it gets to the cell level, oxygen will also diffuse from the blood into the interstitial fluid surrounding the cells. Oxygen will also move from the interstitial fluid, diffuse into the epithelial cells or the tissue cells. Then, after the cells using up oxygen for metabolism and various activities, carbon dioxide is produced as a byproduct or a waste product. And carbon dioxide will also diffuse out of the cell into the interstitial fluid, out of the interstitial fluid into the blood, where it can bind to red blood cells or it can move freely in the plasma. Then finally, it also diffuses out of the blood into the lungs. So we look at how some molecules and some substances move across the various fluid compartments. Now, can someone take how movement of nutrients, water, ions, waste products are done in the system? Looking at the diagram, you have the gastrointestinal tract and then the kidney. Let's use these two. Yes, Godwin. Godwin.
So from the diagram, we see that from the gastrointestinal tract, nutrients moves into the blood plasma and then diffuses into the interstitial spaces. So the blood plasma here is the nutrient diffusing into the interstitial spaces, and then also from the interstitial spaces into the intracellular fluids. That is the intercellular fluids or intracellular fluids. And then from there, water also diffusing back into the interstitial spaces or the interstitial fluids, and also moves into the blood plasma once again, and then back into the gastrointestinal tract.
Okay, Godwin. So Godwin, where is the intracellular fluid found?
So the intracellular fluids are found within the cell proper. That is the main cell.
Yes. Okay, well done. So all that you want to do at the end of the day is to get whatever that we eat, the nutrient into the cells for the cells to use up. The oxygen we breathe in into the cells for the cells to use up. Also, water that you drink, the various electrolytes and ions into the cells for the cells to use them, for the cells to survive, for the tissues to survive, for the organs to survive. Okay, so well done. So as you can see for the water, you can see that water is vice versa. The movement is that way, the two ways. So that means depending on whether you are well hydrated or you are dehydrated, water can move. So there can be instances where water will move from the intracellular fluid or from the cell into the interstitial fluid into the blood to maintain blood pressure. That's when you are dehydrated. But when you are hydrated, taking a lot of water, water moves from the GIT into the blood, into interstitial fluid, into the cells. All right. Then let's take the kidneys. Selena and cancer. Selena.
Yes, please. Yes, madam. So the kidneys, its purpose is to excrete the urine at the end of the day or at the end of the used one. So I think the fluids or the urine passes through the blood plasma when we take in the water, which contains some ions, and it then moves into the interstitial spaces. And throughout and during the process, some ions manipulate its ways into the intracellular fluid, and then it's, how do I even put it? And it then sees some of the waste products. Then it becomes the intravenous waste, and some of these waste products are the urea, the uric acid, and the ammonium. And it then goes into the interstitial fluids, then back to the blood plasma, and then it's excreted out of the body system at the end of the process. This is how I understand it for now. Thank you, madam.
Well done. Well done. All right. So, Selena, let me ask you one question. So, with the explanation for the kidney and how transportation occurs, where is this starting from?
It starts from if I'm not wrong, it has to begin from when we take in the water. So it begins from the blood plasma, moves straight into the interstitial fluids.
No, look at the arrow. Look at the arrows very well.
The urethra.
No, I'm not talking. You are not talking of the organ.
Okay.
The only organ I can see here is the kidney. Yes, and then the urethra. The ureter, sorry. So, okay, it's fine. So you can see that the arrow is starting from here, because look at this one, it's moving up, meaning the cells, yes. So you want to, let's say, excrete excess ions from the cells, probably sodium ions, okay? Then we have excess ions, so we move the ions to the interstitial fluid, then from the interstitial fluid to the blood plasma, then from the blood plasma through the kidneys out. Okay, same for water. So we want to just maintain the normal composition of the cell. So if there's excess, we excrete it in that order. Okay, so for waste, the cell also produces a lot of waste, nitrogenous waste. You mentioned creatinine, uric acid, a lot of them, urea, and so on. So all these are products from the cell after metabolism. And then we are saying we need to get rid of them from the cell. You can see that the arrow excretes is into the interstitial fluid, then from the interstitial fluid out to the blood. Then blood is circulated to the kidney. It passes through the nephrons. Then the nephrons would then excrete out these waste in the form of urine. I hope it's clear. Okay. Any questions up to this point? Any questions up to this point? Yes, Amankwa, Natura, Obi, sorry.
Madam, please, it's a suggestion or an addition with the cells, the ions. When we take, let's say, glucose into consideration, if glucose is in abundance in the cells, that means that glucose will leave the cells into the blood plasma. Please go. Glucose will leave the cell into the blood plasma. And if glucose is less in the cell, that means that glucose will leave blood plasma into the cells. That's why the arrow is facing both upwards and downwards. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Well done. The reason why I didn't mention glucose is because glucose is not an ion, okay? Glucose is not an ion, it's a molecule or nutrient molecule. So I couldn't use that as an example. But what you have just said is similar. When you talk of glucose, the instance where you have a lot of glucose stored in the cell, and the point where you are fasting, where you need it to increase your blood sugar or glucose level, you tend to have glucose movements in that way. And when we have a lot of glucose at the end of digestion, you'll tend to have a lot of them also moving into the cells for metabolism and others for storage. Okay, well done. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is basically physiology, because all that you need to do is to, who is that? Class, can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Yes, please.
Yes, sister.
Okay. So all that we need to do is to maintain good health, to make sure our system is in a steady normal state, such that the cells are able to work well, for the tissues to also work well, for the organs to also work well. And that will move down to homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is very critical and important in our human lives, because without it, we will all die. Homeostasis basically is, we want to maintain a nearly constant internal environment within the body. We want to maintain a nearly constant internal environment in the body. Nearly constant internal environment in the body. And the reason why we need to do that is we have day in and day out, we have a lot of changes that occurs. The outside, physically, that looks like physical insults. For example, when you find yourself in a place where there's low oxygen saturation, now in an environment where we have less oxygen, then your body should have ways and means to make sure that it still gets the needed oxygen it should get. And when you also find yourself in a place where it's very hot, and we all know the cells need an optimum temperature to survive. And therefore, the body should also find its ways and means to make sure it maintains that optimum temperature. So day in and day out, as we move out, move in, when we take in food and all that, it changes the internal environment a little bit. There's a slight change in most of the parameters that we are going to talk about. And all these will give us physiological stress. And this physiological stress is also the stress that we get from our works, our schools, and so on. As we day in and day out, we move in. Is to maintain vibes. If there's a deviation, that's where you will become sick or you can die, depending on the intensity. So we have variables that you'll be talking about, different variables. So we have different variables within the body that the body has its own ways and means to compensate and then make sure it works out. For example, concentration of oxygen, concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood. So we will be talking more of the blood because the blood is what transports most of these variables or parameters in the body. For example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, waste products, volumes and pressures, all dependent on the blood. Temperature, which is mainly heat, is also transported by blood. pH maintained by the blood. Concentration of salt, other electrolytes, all within the blood. So the blood is very key in maintenance of homeostasis. So when you breathe in, oxygen will diffuse into the blood from the alveoli. After metabolism, carbon dioxide will also diffuse out of the blood. So in a way, blood is moving to every part. So if you have higher levels of oxygen than normal, this blood is being transported to every part of the body and it can affect the function of the cells and tissue. Same for carbon dioxide. Same for nutrients. So for example, glucose. If you have a lot of glucose, you have normal glucose levels. If you have higher of, they have their own normal level, low level range in the blood. I hope the class can hear me.
Yes, sir.
No, we couldn't hear
No,
you
sister, we couldn't hear you for some time.
for
We
the
went
some.
off. Yes.
For example, the waste products, when you talk of creatinine, urea, and so on, they are not zero in the blood. They have their normal low level range in the blood. So if their level rises above normal, then we are saying since blood is transporting the waste, blood is going to reach out to every part of the body and therefore eventually is going to alter the function of the cells and tissues. Same for volume. Volume, we focus on mainly water. So if water is a lot in your system, mainly the blood, we tend to pee a lot because we need to excrete water to maintain normal volume of blood. If you don't maintain normal volume of blood, that can also affect blood pressure. Temperature also, heat management or regulation, where we tend to regulate heat, whether you are feeling cold or you are feeling warm or you are in a hot environment. You tend to sweat to release heat from the blood so that you maintain normal temperature, normal body temperature. pH, electrolytes, and salt are all parts. So all these variables need to be maintained in their normal level of range to ensure the body to function well. Okay. Now, we have external stimuli. External stimuli is what the external or the external part of the body, I mean the environment, what the changes that the environment brings up that affects the internal. For example, where you find yourself, as I explained, hot or cold, that would affect the internal environment, and that is classified as an external stimuli lack of oxygen, or when you find yourself in a more polluted environment where it becomes difficult to catch your breath or get enough oxygen. Tend to have pathogens, infections entering the system. All these are external stimuli and toxins and so on. Then you tend to have internal, where body temperature, for example, you take chilled drink or coke, that can alter the internal body temperature. Blood pressure altered by whether you are drinking water or not. And you also have concentration of glucose, salts, oxygen levels, physical, psychological distress, and so on. All these are internally what changes the environment. It starts from the inside and it alters the homeostasis of the body. Now, when there's disturbance in homeostasis, we call it homeostatic imbalance. Homeostatic imbalance. And this can be mild or moderate, and that can lead to sickness. That's why day in and day out, patients rush to hospitals because there's mild or moderate changes in their system because of homeostatic imbalance. And the point where the changes or the changes is severe, we are saying it can cause a person to die. When there's a vast shift, or there's a vast shift of a particular parameter from its normal range, we are saying the person can die. So as we mentioned earlier, we have different systems working together to ensure homeostasis. However, most often we have the nervous system and then the endocrine system working together or independently to ensure homeostasis. The nervous system, as I mentioned, basically is responsible for transmission of signal. So before the system or the body will know that there's a change, the nervous system comes to play. And how it will be resolved is this same nervous system that will transmit signal to the brain or wherever that needs to know for interpretation and response to come out. Then we have the endocrine system that is mainly organs making sure to secrete hormones and other chemicals for some changes to some changes to be corrected. So you use examples to better explain all that we are talking about. Then we talk of the homeostatic control mechanism. So it's just made of a system that most changes that may occur in the body needs to pass through before they are corrected. First of all, we'll talk of the receptors or senses, and all these are under the nervous system, So you talk of receptors or senses. So I prefer the senses for now. So it's senses change. So whenever there's any change in any of the parameters within the body, a slight change, we are saying these senses will sense it, and then it would pass on a signal to the integrating or control center. Mainly, this is the brain or the spinal cord. So you can say the central nervous system. Then the central nervous system will interpret the signal or the change that we are talking about and bring a response or an output. The response will travel to effectors. The third one, effectors here are, for example, where you want the change that has happened to be corrected. So, for example, your muscles, probably we need to move your muscles before the change that happened can be corrected. Your muscles or it can go to a gland in the endocrine system to secrete a hormone, for the hormone to travel to a particular organ for something to occur. So basically, most homeostatic mechanisms undergo this, where first of all, we have receptors or sensors sensing change that has occurred in the body. Then the change would be passed on as a signal to the central nervous system, which is the integrating or control center. Then the response will come from this integrating control center to effectors. Effectors here can be muscles, glands that needs to act to correct that change. Yes, Daniel.
Okay, madam, please, I wanted to find out why the body can't store oxygen like it stores excess energy as fat. So that when you need it, maybe it will compensate you for that period or something like that.
Okay. So it can't store oxygen. It can't store oxygen because always we don't have a storage place for oxygen. And it's just look at how oxygen is transmitted. Day in and day out, as you breathe in, it binds to hemoglobin in the red blood cell, then it moves around. When it gets to the cells will use up the oxygen to produce energy. Okay, so we don't store. So if any product of oxygen is coming out of the cells, it's just the byproduct, which is the carbon dioxide and then the energy it was able to make. Okay, we don't store oxygen in the cells. Who asked that? Daniel, yes. Daniel, are you okay?
Madam, please, I'm okay.
Yes. Yes, Emmanuel.
Okay, madam, please, I wanted to know that with the receptors, aren't them the same at the central nervous system, who will be signaling the imbalance of these chemicals or substances in order for their correction?
When you talk of receptors, you are moving us into details, into the nervous system details, but we'll get there. When you talk of receptors can be found in a lot of parts of the nervous system. Some is found in the central nervous system, the brain, where it's able to sense change in the brain. Okay. And when it senses change in the brain, as a function of a receptor, it only senses. Then it transmits, a transmission would occur through the sensory nerve to the integrating center. The integrating center can still be the brain. Okay, part of the brain, a region of the brain where it interprets the signal and brings out a response. These same receptors can be found in your skin, can be found in your organs, every part of your body where it senses change in that particular region. Receptor senses change. They can be found also in the central nervous system. However, the main function of the central nervous system is to interpret signals. They are just like the system unit of the computer. That's where the main deal happens. That's the brain of the body. I don't know if you get me. Was it Berfi or whoever asked the question? Yes, Emmanuel.
Yes, please, I get you, madam.
Yeah, when we get to nervous system, I'll explain better. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? My time is up. If you have any other question, just write it down. God willing, next week you ask. It's time. So the assignment, please, it's a discussion. So God willing, next week I'll just call your name